Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive today. We're going to be looking at what it takes to escape homelessness.
Okay.
And we've got this fascinating article called 10 Inspirational Stories of People Who Escaped a Life of Homelessness.
Wow.
It's from Humans, published back in 2018. And what I think is so cool about this article is it's not just about statistics,
Right.
It's about real stories about resilience and resourcefulness.
Yeah.
We're going to hear about a football player, a single mom, a war veteran, all sorts of folks from different walks of life.
Interesting.
And each story shows a different path out of homelessness. So I'm really curious to see, like, what are those common threads? If we look at all these different stories,
Yeah, that's a great question.
what can we learn from their experiences?
Well, it's important to remember that when we hear about those over 553,000 permanently homeless individuals, that's from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development.
Right.
They're, unique journeys within that statistic.
Totally. Each person has their own story. So our first story is about this guy, Brahir Murphy. He was a high school football player, but he had a really rough start. He lost his mother when he was just 5 years old.
Oh, wow.
And that loss just really impacted his life. His living situation was unstable, and it really took a toll on his grades.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Like, how can you focus on schoolwork when you're constantly moving, dealing with different environments and caregivers?
Right. It disrupts any sense of routine
Exactly.
or normalcy for a young person.
So what was the turning point for him?
Well, it seems like he confided in his football coach, Sam Greiner. And Coach Greiner actually took him in,
Really?
providing that stable environment and support system that Murphy really needed.
That's incredible. That was going above and beyond. It wasn't just about, having a roof over his head. It was about that stability so he could actually focus. And his grades improved dramatically. He got a 3.7 GPA.
Wow.
He became the quarterback. And his team won the state championships.
That's amazing. What a turnaround.
Yeah, it's such a success story. So what can we learn from this?
Well, I think Murphy's story shows us just how crucial a stable environment is for a young person's development,
Right.
especially when they've experienced trauma or loss.
Right.
Coach Greiner didn't just give him a place to live. He offered mentorship guidance, that sense of belonging. It was essential for his growth.
Yeah, it shows the impact a single person can have.
It really does.
So let's move on to Elijah Arnold.
Okay.
He was experiencing homelessness while working at IHOP and living in his car.
Wow.
What stands out to you about his story?
Well, there was that armed robbery at the IHOP,
Oh, yeah.
and Elijah, he didn't hesitate. He tackled the robber.
He put his own life at risk.
Yeah, to protect everyone in the restaurant.
It's incredible when you think about it. He is dealing with his own struggles, sleeping in his car every night, but still showed such courage and
Wow.
selflessness.
It really makes you think about the assumptions people might have
Yeah.
about those experiencing homelessness.
Yeah.
His actions show immense bravery
Hmm.
and a deep concern for others, which, go far beyond his circumstances.
Absolutely. So
Right.
what happened after the robbery?
But the community was just so moved by what he did. They rallied around him. There were donations, gift cards, even a $1,000 reward.
Wow, that's heartwarming. His story really shows the power of community and how a single act of courage can inspire people.
It shows how interconnected we all are and how kindness can create a ripple effect
Yeah.
and lead to positive change.
Okay, so now let's talk about Raymond Pates. He was a Vietnam War veteran who faced homelessness and PTSD after returning from service.
Yeah, Raymond's story is unfortunately not uncommon. It sheds light on the invisible wounds that many veterans carry long after the battles are over.
That's right. It's so hard to reintegrate into civilian life after experiencing the trauma of war.
Exactly.
So how did Raymond find his way out of homelessness?
Well, for him, the church became a source of comfort and strength. He found solace in his faith and a sense of community. He also got involved in charity work,
Really?
focusing his energy on helping others.
Hmm.
And that seemed to give him a renewed purpose.
Wow, so giving back can be a powerful form of healing,
It can be.
especially for those who've experienced trauma. It allows you to connect with others, find meaning, and contribute to something larger than yourself.
It highlights the importance of community support.
Mm.
For Raymond, finding that supportive network
Mm.
through the church and his charity work was really instrumental in his journey.
Okay, let's shift gears now and talk about Joey,
Okay.
a young man who found himself homeless in London after losing his job and his girlfriend.
Oh, wow.
Imagine being far from home with no support system.
It's hard to fathom that sense of isolation
Yeah.
and despair.
But there was a twist of fate. This couple, Charlotte and Taylor, they saw him on a cold winter night. and offered him a place to stay.
That's amazing.
I'm curious what prompted them to reach out. I mean, it would have been easy to just walk by.
I think it speaks volumes about their compassion. They recognized his vulnerability, and they chose to act.
It was more than just a warm place to sleep.
Yeah.
It was a vital human connection, a reminder that he wasn't alone.
It also gave him a chance to rebuild. Through their network, he was able to find a job and eventually get back on his feet.
That's a great example of how small acts of kindness can have a ripple effect.
It's a powerful message about human connection and helping those in need.
Okay, so Liz Murray's story is one of incredible resilience. She grew up in poverty with drug-addicted parents, facing a level of instability most of us can't even imagine.
It's heartbreaking to think about what she went through. Her mother struggled with schizophrenia and AIDS, so Liz had to be a caregiver at a very young age.
Oh, wow.
She missed a lot of school. They were constantly facing eviction and hunger.
And then at 16, she lost her mother. I mean, many would have trembled. What drove her to keep going?
Well, it seems like losing her mother was a turning point. She decided to take control of her life and focus on her education, something she didn't have much opportunity to do before.
She enrolled in a high school program for gifted students and essentially caught up on years of missed education.
Well, that's dedication.
Yeah, and ultimately it led her to Harvard University. It really shows the power of education.
It's a beacon of hope.
Yeah.
It shows that it's possible to break the cycle, even when faced with unimaginable adversity.
Her determination is truly inspiring. It underscores the importance of access to education and resources for those facing hardship.
It's a reminder that everyone deserves a chance, regardless of their background,
Absolutely.
to reach their full potential.
Okay, next we have Amanda Richer, who experienced homelessness after a traumatic brain injury left her unable to work.
So what was her experience like?
Well, she ended up living in a tent in Seattle, struggling to survive. But despite all that, she stayed positive.
Really, it's incredible to find positivity in such difficult circumstances.
It makes you wonder where that inner strength comes from. So what did she do to turn things around?
Well, she got involved with local organizations and volunteered at soup kitchens. She also did an interview with a YouTube channel called Invisible People, sharing her story and her message of self-love.
So she was actively trying to connect with others and contribute.
Right.
And that visibility, coupled with her positive attitude, it really resonated with people. Her interview went viral, and a GoFundMe was set up for her, which allowed her to get an apartment.
That's amazing.
So her willingness to share her story and her positive attitude ultimately led to her escaping homelessness.
It's a reminder of the power of storytelling and online communities.
Okay, now let's talk about Amos Reed. He grew up experiencing homelessness with his single mother, moving between shelters, motels, and the streets.
It's hard to imagine.
But he had this passion for board games, and it turned out to be his saving grace.
Really?
He walked into a game store called Game Seeker and asked for a job,
Wow, that's brave.
and they gave him a chance. It's amazing how a hobby can become a lifeline. So the job gave him stability. He could rent a room and escape that cycle of homelessness. It was more than just a job.
Right.
It was a place where he felt a sense of belonging and purpose.
He shows the importance of giving people opportunities to find work that aligns with their passions.
Absolutely. Everyone has something unique to offer, regardless of their circumstances.
That's so true.
It's about empowering people to rebuild their lives and contribute to society.
Exactly.
Okay, Gene Manganaro's story is one of transformation and giving back. Abandoned by his parents at 15.
Oh, wow.
He faced years of addiction and homelessness. What led to his turnaround?
Well, at 29, he decided to make a change. He moved to Florida, started attending AA meetings, and a kind stranger offered him a place to stay
Really?
and encouraged him to find work.
So this stranger gave him a chance to prove himself.
Yeah, and Gene took that chance. He found work almost immediately and started to rebuild his life.
But he didn't stop there. He went on to found the Gratitude House, which helps others escape homelessness.
That's incredible.
He replicated that 2-week do-or-die opportunity that helped him turn his life around and offered a structured program for people seeking to escape homelessness.
What a powerful example.
It shows how personal transformation can lead to a desire to give back and create positive change.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity and helping those who are struggling.
Okay, now this next story might sound familiar. It's about Chris Gardner. His journey of overcoming homelessness while raising his son was depicted in the movie The Pursuit of Happiness.
Oh, wow.
He faced eviction, financial hardship, and the shelter system for a whole year. all while raising his young son.
That must have been incredibly difficult.
He was determined to provide for his child and worked tirelessly as an unpaid intern at a stock brokerage firm. He even snuck his son into the office at night so they could sleep under his desk.
That's dedication.
What drove him to push through all that?
Oh, I think it was his love for his son
Yeah.
and the belief that they deserved better. He refused to give up on his dream.
And that perseverance paid off. Chris got a full-time position and achieved incredible success.
It's a classic example of overcoming adversity.
Yeah, through hard work and determination.
Mhm.
It's about believing in the possibility of a better tomorrow.
It's a powerful message of hope
Mm-hmm.
and having a goal to strive for, even when things seem impossible.
Finally, we come to Dariz and Diana,
Okay.
a single mother and son, who experienced homelessness in Detroit. What led to their situation?
Well, Deanna lost her job as a nurse, and that had a cascading effect. She faced a lack of affordable childcare, inadequate support, and the struggle of making ends meet.
Those are the systemic issues that often push families into homelessness.
It's not always a personal failing. It's often these larger issues
Yeah.
that make it so difficult to stay afloat.
So Diana refused to give up her son, so they lived in shelters until Darius was old enough for school, even when she found a job. It wasn't enough to break that cycle. They finally got a low-income apartment, but couldn't afford furniture.
Oh, wow.
It's heartbreaking to think of a young boy sleeping on a pile of blankets, but then a nonprofit called Humble Design stepped in and furnished their entire apartment.
What a difference that must have made.
It was transformative. Darius cried tears of joy. Humble Design went beyond basic necessities. They created a sense of warmth and dignity. They transformed a house into a home.
It's amazing what organizations like that can do.
Yeah, they're addressing the needs of families experiencing homelessness. And going beyond just providing shelter, they're creating a space for families to heal and thrive.
It's about the emotional and psychological well-being as well.
Okay, so we've heard all 10 stories now. What are your initial thoughts?
Well, each story is so unique and represents different challenges. But what strikes me is the resilience that runs through each narrative. Despite facing incredible adversity, each person persevered, often with the help of others.
That's what makes these stories so powerful. They remind us that even in the darkest times, there's always hope and people willing to help.
It's a powerful message about human connection and positive change.
We'll be back in a flash for part 2 of our deep dive into escaping homelessness. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to our deep dive into these inspiring stories of people escaping homelessness. And, as we're hearing these stories, I think it's important to remember that they're all happening against this backdrop of these big societal issues.
You're absolutely right.
Things like lack of affordable housing, insufficient mental health services, economic disparities. These all play a significant role, in perpetuating homelessness.
So we're seeing all this resilience from individuals, but individual effort can only go so far when you're facing these systemic barriers. Can you give us some examples of what these systemic issues actually look like?
Sure. So imagine trying to find an apartment on minimum wage. That's almost impossible in many cities.
Right.
Or needing mental health support, but facing long waiting lists.
Yeah.
Or unaffordable care. These systemic issues create a cycle that's really tough to break free from.
And it's like this hidden web of obstacles a lot of people aren't even aware of. It's not just about willpower, it's about access to resources and support.
Exactly.
So when we think about Darius and Diana, that single mother and son, and how Humble Design helped them furnish their apartment, they were addressing a gap in the system by creating that sense of normalcy.
And dignity? Yeah, they weren't just providing furniture, they were creating a sense of home. And that can have a huge impact on a family's well-being.
It's meeting both practical needs and addressing the emotional toll that homelessness takes. So they're creating a warm, inviting space. And that helps families rebuild with a sense of hope.
It's not just about physical comfort, it's about restoring their dignity.
It's inspiring to see organizations like Humble Design, finding these creative ways to support people.
And there are many others out there. Countless organizations across the country working to combat homelessness.
What are some of the things they're doing?
Well, some focus on providing housing. Others offer job training, mental health services, addiction recovery support, legal aid.
So it's like this complex web of support systems.
It is.
All playing a role in creating this safety net.
It underscores the importance of collaboration, addressing homelessness effectively requires a multifaceted strategy.
Okay, so we've talked about providing direct services, but it seems like shifting public perception
Yes.
is equally important. How do we encourage people to get involved?
Well, sharing these personal stories is a great way to humanize the issue and challenge stereotypes. When we hear these stories, we start to see the people behind the statistics and understand the complex factors involved.
So it's about fostering empathy
Exactly.
rather than judgment. And that understanding can lead to action.
It can.
People can volunteer, donate, advocate for policies that address the root causes. You know, we've been talking about resilience and hope, but it's also important to acknowledge that the journey out of homelessness isn't always easy.
You're right.
There can be setbacks and challenges along the way.
Progress isn't always linear. There might be relapses or new obstacles. It's a process.
So we need continued support systems
We do.
to help people navigate those challenges. It's not just about the initial help. It's about creating that long-term support
Yeah.
to prevent people from falling back into homelessness.
Exactly.
So things like mental health care, job training.
Affordable housing. These are all essential.
It's like a safety net that catches people when they stumble
Yeah.
and helps them get back on their feet. But we also need to advocate for systemic change.
Absolutely.
Policies that address the root causes, like lack of affordable housing, inadequate mental health services, economic inequality. So it's not just about helping individuals, it's about creating a society that's more equitable and supportive for everyone.
Exactly.
So to our listeners out there, we encourage you to be inspired by these stories, but also to take action. What are some things people can do to make a difference?
Well, you can volunteer at a local shelter or a meal program. You can donate to organizations working on the front lines. You can advocate for policy changes that address those root causes.
Those are great suggestions. Even small actions can have a ripple effect.
They can.
And together we can create a more compassionate society where everyone has a home.
It's about recognizing our interconnectedness. The well-being of our communities depends on the well-being of all its members.
That's a great point. We'll be back in a flash for part 3. To wrap up our conversation about escaping homelessness, stay tuned.
We're back for the final part of our deep dive. And, I've been thinking about all these stories we've heard, and I'm just really struck by the resilience and determination.
It is remarkable, isn't it?
It is.
These stories really show the power of the human spirit to overcome. But they also challenge us to look beyond the individual and consider those systemic factors that contribute to homelessness in the first place.
You're right. We can't just celebrate individual successes without acknowledging the bigger picture, the underlying issues
Exactly.
that make it so difficult for so many. So yeah, like we can find inspiration in Brahim's story, Elijah's, Amanda's, but we have to remember that their journeys were shaped by so many things, access to support, opportunities, even those simple acts of kindness
Right.
that not everyone is lucky enough to encounter. And that brings us back to that idea of rare, brief, and non-recurring. It's a good framework, I think.
For how we can work towards a future where homelessness is less of a problem.
It emphasizes the need for that multifaceted approach. We need to address those immediate needs, but also work to prevent future homelessness by tackling the root causes.
So it's like creating a safety net, but also fixing the things that cause people to fall into it in the first place.
Precisely.
It's individual action, community support, and policy changes.
Yeah.
To create a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive. So as we wrap up today, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think it's crucial to remember that homelessness is not a personal failing. It's often the result of circumstances beyond an individual's control, things like job loss, mental health challenges, domestic violence, lack of affordable housing.
So it's about shifting our perspective from blame to understanding, recognizing that shared humanity, and also remembering that everyone has the potential to overcome, given the right support.
These stories are proof of that.
They really are. They give us a lot to think about. How we view homelessness and how we can help create a more supportive society.
We can all make a difference, whether it's volunteering, donating, or advocating for policy changes. Every action counts. It all contributes to creating a world where everyone has a place to call home.
That's a beautiful thought. So these stories aren't just about escaping homelessness. They're about resilience, the power of community, and hope for a brighter future. Let's carry that with us. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked your curiosity and inspired you to take action.